sincerity is cool. If you want to build a trading card business, part of you probably thinks, oh, this is pretty lame. I shouldn't take it too seriously, and I shouldn't tell people about it, and I shouldn't be like open about it because it's kind of lame, it's kind of dorky, it's not something I should be proud of. It's something I need to hide. Maybe you don't feel that way, but I think a lot of people probably do. I know I have felt that way about my passions in general. Our culture is very ironic in the sense that it leans on irony and eschews sincerity. And it's ingrained into us from a pretty young age. I mean, in school, if you try anything, or if you show that you have passion or desire for something, and that you're willing to really follow it, you're often going to get made fun of, ridiculed, talked down to, and it doesn't feel good. And we carry those feelings with us, and unfortunately the attitudes come with us too into adulthood. And then often the same people who are critical and mean to dorks and nerds, or people who just are passionate and who are unabashedly themselves in school and in those type of like young contexts, often they carry those attitudes with them up into higher contexts, and so then they act exactly the same way in the workplace or in college classes or in any sort of family setting. And so it doesn't really matter where you go, there's going to be people around you who tell you that it's silly or foolish or lame or cringe to want what you want, to do what you do, and to care about the things that you care about. And you don't want to take yourself too seriously. You do want to be chill and relaxed about stuff. But there also is nothing wrong. In fact, it's virtuous, I would say, to care about stuff in your life, to care about the things that you have passion for, that you have interest in. It's cool to take interest in things. Some people think reading is lame. That has not stopped me from stockpiling a bunch of books. I haven't read all these, but I have them available to me so that when the time comes, I have the thing at hand that I want to learn about, because I'm just passionate about learning and I love reading. And this isn't all nonfiction. Even in the world of like reading, people who read a lot, there's some people who think fiction is lame. I've got From Here Over is all fiction. And so some people would think that that's cringe, that I have all this fiction and that I've always got fiction in rotation. And then I've got like conspiracy theories. I got Bigfoot on here. I got alternate history, but I also have, the actual account written by Julius Caesar of his conquest of Gaul, mixed in with like actual hard science. I've got On the Origin of Species up here. So I've got a big mix of stuff that I'm just into, and I find it interesting and fascinating. And the same way that I ramble on dorkishly to the camera here, this is how I am in real life. I'm a dork. And I used to always be ashamed of that and, hide it and want to keep it, behind closed doors and not really show that side of myself. But over time I realized that there's nothing wrong with liking things, and there's nothing wrong with not liking things. It's not fair to have an expectation with people that they must be into what you're into. However, it's also not necessarily a great idea for you to hedge or to hold yourself back from the things that you do actually take interest in because you're worried about what other people are going to think or say. So how that applies to like a TCG business means like there's going to be a lot of people that think it's lame or cringe that you're selling cardboard, or that you're collecting or selling cardboard, or that you even have the slightest inclination towards some sort of entrepreneurship. And they might look at your cardboard hobby as something dumb or silly or immature, or like a fake business. But you got to start somewhere, and you're not really going to be successful in anything in life that you don't apply yourself to. And so at a certain point, you have to decide to be audacious. And so audacity is defined in a couple different ways. Some people define it as like a brash rudeness and disregard for decorum. And to a certain extent, sometimes that is required for you to be a successful entrepreneur, because you have to break out of the self-imposed limitations that people put upon themselves that stop them from breaking out of the status quo. You have to be audacious enough to believe that you can be successful at something that most people would never even try. You have to be audacious enough to believe that the thing that you want, that many people tell you is not worth wanting, you have to be audacious enough to reject their perspective and their criticism, and instead to pursue the thing for which you have passion with boldness and courage, and without allowing others to constrain you with their limited perspectives. Now, what you can't do is expect them to understand you or appreciate things the way that you appreciate them. That's not reasonable. You can't control how other people are. You can control whether or not you allow their perceptions and their words to control you. And so the way that you act on this is, first, there are times where you just need to keep your dream to yourself and just work on it. Put your head down, get to work, and don't listen to anybody who tries to pull you out of that. Eliminate distractions. In the beginning, if you're towards the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, and again, this is directed towards people who are selling cardboard as either their first or a adventure in entrepreneurship, there's going to be some sort of status quo that already exists in your life that you're going to have to make changes to in order to pursue this thing that you are after. And many of the people who you have been surrounded with, who do not see you as an entrepreneur, or do not see the entrepreneurial path or value in cardboard, are not going to understand what you're doing. And many of them will mean well when they start trying to kind of talk you out of it, even to a certain extent teasing you about it. You have to rise above that, and you have to start learning. This is absolutely critical in entrepreneurship. You have to start learning to listen to the voice of wisdom that lives inside you. There is wisdom inside you. There is some sort of logical framework that exists in your mind and in your spirit that has taste and has desire and has pattern recognition. And so when you feel yourself pulled toward an opportunity or toward an idea or toward a passion, it's because something in the makeup of your spirit, something in your personal logos of which you are comprised, is pulling you toward it, and it recognizes something in that thing, in that path, that is present in you already. There is a part of you that you are only going to find and connect with and integrate if you go down that path. And other people are simply not going to understand that. especially when you're first starting out and just people don't see it, and people don't see you as the type of person who is who you will become as you walk the path. And so you have to be willing to start trusting that voice in your spirit that's telling you, that's inviting you to your potential, instead of trusting the voices of the people around you, even to a certain extent, the voices that you imagine are around you. Because the truth about life is that most people aren't thinking about us at all. And so people like me, who are more inclined, and perhaps like you, or perhaps not like you, but if you're still listening to the video at this point, there's probably some aspect that you recognize in what I'm describing. People like us have a little bit of a inclination toward people pleasing. It's just something that I developed due to my circumstances. Grew up in pretty precarious circumstances, low security circumstances, where my well-being was in part dependent on people pleasing, the people around me, or some sort of institutional frameworks around me, in order to not lose things that I considered essential, things that are essential, like housing and access to food and stuff like that. And so I carried a lot of that scarcity mindset and fear with me, and so then I developed a tendency to kind of project criticism and amplify criticism, and then hold myself back according to an overinflated kind of imagination and interpretation of criticism that was out there. So someone would make a passing comment or make an insult or something like that. I would magnify it in my head, turn it into a boundary that I couldn't cross, or some sort of prison cell that I would then constrain myself into, and would refuse to do the things, or try the things, or say the things, or be the person that I actually am. And I still, deal with that, especially when I'm editing these videos and I'm like, oh, should I cut that out? Should I cut that out? Some things I cringe at, some things I probably should cringe at, but I'm learning to trust the voice in my head, and to trust that if I pursue the things that call me and conduct myself in a way that feels natural and correct, that the path that is for me will open to me, and I will recognize the direction that I should be going. And you also learn that in life you're going to make mistakes. Some things are going to feel right, and then later you're going to look back and realize that they were not correct, and yet you didn't die. There was no big catastrophe. It didn't work the way you wanted it to, but it was not the end of your world. And so as you experience these things, these little letdowns and setbacks, you start to realize that life is pretty chill. Nothing really matters that much, and there's really no reason not to pursue the things that you are passionate about and become someone that you want to be, off in the distance, that is different from who you are now. That there's really no reason not to pursue that path, because the people who are worth keeping around will stick around. They will come to recognize the new you as an even better version of the person that they love. The people who are not worth having around will see themselves out, and you will find a new tribe. Like, for sure, you will find a new tribe. To a certain extent, that tribe may be dead people speaking to you through the pages of books. There's a synchronicity that I feel in my soul when I connect to the words of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and the Apostle Paul and Dostoevsky. And, I mean, reading a lot of my favorite manga, there's just, I feel truth in the pages. And I feel kinship in the creator of these works. And I mean, that's largely what draws me to cards as well. And so what I've learned is that a life well lived is going to be lived sincerely, with genuine passion and genuine pursuit of passion. And a strong business is going to be built with sincerity. It's not going to be built on irony. You don't see any big, successful entrepreneurs with longevity who look at the businesses that they build and operate and steward as silly or not worth caring about. That is one of the, I think, great tests of an entrepreneur is, are you willing to look like a fool while you take some crazy idea seriously? And if you are willing to commit to that and to take a crazy idea and turn it into, transmute it into a real, thriving business, that is how you achieve success. But you can only do that with sincerity. You can only do that by looking at what you do and taking it seriously without shame. And so the reason I say this is just because I hang out in a lot of entrepreneur communities where people are either trying to build personal brands or trying to become a writer, an author or something, or they're cardboard communities where people are building little TCG side hustles, communities of artists, stuff like that. And it's and I did it too, it's very common to see people describe themselves as like an aspiring this or that. I'm an aspiring writer, and they hedge. They'll say like, oh, I'm writing bad fiction, but I just love it, so I don't want to stop. Like, no, you're learning how to write good fiction. You're putting in the work that's required to actually become a writer, because writers are not born. Writers forge themselves out of the creative work that they do. That's the thing about creativity. When you do creative work, you create yourself. And so we have all of these ideas throughout human history that we are created in the image of a creator. It's not just the Bible. It's a transcendent principle. And I believe that that means that there is an inclination in us to create, because the act of creation creates a part of you too. It's the only way that you can become complete, is to take part of yourself and imbue it into a thing of beauty that you cherish. And so that's why this stuff, yes, at a certain extent, this is just a silly hobby where I'm stacking up shiny cardboard and selling it to other people who take it too seriously, quote unquote. At the same time, this is a passion. This is a real business providing real value and happiness to other people. It is a real challenge that requires real knowledge and real skills and a real work ethic and real workflows and systems. So this silly hobby requires the same sort of strategy and system building and sacrifice that any other business requires. So I might as well take it seriously and describe it as a serious endeavor and not hedge or talk down about myself or my passions just because other people look at it as cringe or silly. And this is just, I have kind of a severe personality, and so my perspective is just one of many. This is just what I have learned to help me, that it is helpful to me to take things a little bit more seriously without shame. All that said, it is good to be chill. It's good to be able to laugh in life. It's good to be able to accept ups and downs. It's important to be able to accept ups and downs. And it is important to realize that none of this matters. And this shiny cardboard, yes, it is just shiny cardboard. There's value imbued in it. There's opportunity imbued in it. But it is just organic matter that's going to decay. It is subject to the laws of entropy, just like my flesh and energy are. So stuff matters, but it also doesn't matter. And so when you're trying to figure out, like, how should you conduct your life, how should you approach your business, I think it really just comes down to, like, what is the experience that you want to have? Do you want to have an experience that is rewarding? Do you want to have an experience that stretches you and forces you to grow and takes you to places and levels that impress you? They're not going to impress everybody. All that matters is if they impress you, because you are the one having this experience. This is your life. You're the one that is actually doing this stuff. You are exchanging your life, your energy, your time that you cannot get back and you don't get another chance. You're exchanging it for an experience. What is the experience that you want to have? Once you make that decision, protect it, take it seriously, and do it without shame or hedging or irony. I think I've said enough on this. Have fun, be chill about stuff, but be bold, be audacious. Take yourself seriously in ways that other people won't understand. Break away from the status quo. I say this all the time. If you want to have an outstanding life, you got to stand out. And so that means you need to conduct yourself differently than other people do, because what most people get out of life is disappointing. And so if you want to have a life that is different from the average, the average person is some combination of depressed, divorced, poor, and unhealthy. So if you want to avoid that deadly combination of things that turns what could be a beautiful life into one of just despair, then take it seriously. Use your life well, with intention, and fill your life with the things that make it worthwhile. Take risks, do stuff, take it seriously. Become yourself. Don't put yourself into a box that other people put on you. Don't put yourself into a box that of comparison, based on looking around at how other people live and build their businesses and talk about stuff. There is a spirit inside you that recognizes truth. And so gravitate towards what feels true for you, what feels right, and have a great time while you're doing it. If you want to buy some of this silly, shiny cardboard because you also think it's cool, just like I do, visit www.getdkc.com. See you later.